Hi everyone, it's Olivia here at Philadelphia's Magic Gardens, and we're here today for PECO Family Jams. And this month I'm going to show you how to make our mosaic medallions, which are one of our favorite projects here at the Magic Gardens. And you just need a few things you have around your house. And I'm also going to show you what the mosaic medallions are based on here at the Magic Gardens. So the reason why we started making these is because they're a lot like the blobs that you see in the mosaics here at the Magic Gardens, and I actually have a blob right here to show you. So these pieces are made flat on a table, just the way we're going to make our blobs today. But these don't have any kind of container. We're going to use jar lids for ours, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But they are basically cement, colored cement, or what we call grout, which is what holds the tiles together. But these are just a sort of pancake of cement. You can see this one's pink, that are laid out on the table. And then Isaiah Zagar puts the different pieces in them while they're still wet. So he's just pressing all of these pieces in here. We can see this one has part of a mug, there's a little foot here that broke off of something, some mirror pieces and some other tiles. And then he puts holes in it so that the whole thing can be bolted to the wall, because this is pretty heavy. So these are some pieces you'll see all throughout the mosaics at the Magic Gardens and in other Zagar mosaics in the neighborhood. So we're gonna make our own little version today. So the things that you need to make your own mosaic medallion are a jar lid, and it can be really any kind of lid. So I have some different kinds here. You can also use like a bottle cap if you don't have a jar lid. It just needs to be some kind of little container. What we're gonna do is put a hole through it. So if you do have access to a drill, you can drill a hole through your lid, and that will mean that you can string it, just like I have this one on the yarn here. Now you don't need to do that, it just means you won't be able to really hang it up, but it's not necessary. And we're also going to use grout today. So the grout that I have right here, you can see it, is white sanded grout, so it does look pretty much like sand, and you can get this at any craft store. You could also get it at like a home improvement store. And the reason why we want to use white grout for this is because we're going to add some color. So you also want some paint, which is how we're going to get the color into the grout. I have acrylic paint, which works really well, but you could also use tempera or really any other kind of paint you have. It's just sort of the richer the color in your paint, the richer the color in your grout is going to be. And then you'll also need some little things that you can use to make your mosaic. So you can see some others that I have, some examples that I have here. You can really use anything that is small that you can kind of press into the grout will work. So little beads, fish stones from like a fish tank, these little glass beads that people sometimes use for decoration. We have some little shells, we have some little macaroni. In fact, I have some here that we've colored, which you can look at one of our other videos to see how to do that. Soda can tabs, little tiny tiles, really anything you can find like that that you think will fit in here will be great. And also this one actually is a good example. If you don't have grout, you could just use any kind of white glue and sort of fill the lid with glue and stick your pieces in that way. It will just take a little bit longer to dry. They won't be so stuck in there, but that works too. So once you have all of your materials, like I said, if you do want to drill a hole in, you'll want to do that beforehand. String it, and then you also want to make sure you cover the hole with a piece of tape. That's just so the grout doesn't slide out of there while it's still wet. So we have our lid here on the string, and then we're going to get our grout ready. So if you get one of our kits when you come here to the Magic Gardens on PECO Family Jams Sunday, you'll have a little bag of the sanded grout just like this, and a little cup, and you just want to pour a little bit in. Especially if you're only making one, you don't need a ton of grout for one lid, but you might be able to make a few actually. And if you want to make a whole bunch of these, you can mix up a bigger batch of grout and do them all at the same time. So you just want to pour a little bit into a cup, And you do want to use a container that you don't mind getting dirty. So I just have this little Dixie cup, which I'm just gonna throw away when we're done. If you're using something that you don't wanna throw away, you wanna make sure that you clean it out really well. And I would not use anything that you eat off of. So don't use your dishes or your silverware or anything like that to do this. So once you have that grout in there, you're just gonna add a little bit of water. So I'm just gonna pour a little bit from this cup. You do need just a little bit of water. And then I'm just using a little popsicle stick here to mix this up. You could also use like a disposable spoon, or you can even see this is a spoon we've used before, but it does have grout all over it, so I'm certainly not gonna go eat my lunch with this. And you want to mix it up really well so that it doesn't look dry, but also so that it's not very soupy. So mine actually is maybe a little bit too soupy. So I'm gonna add a little bit more grout to it for my container right here. And you can just keep doing this. So that's why I say start with a little bit of grout, add a little bit of water, and just kind of keep going back and forth until you have a nice consistency. And I would say the consistency you're sort of going for is like a thick stew or mud, something like that. So you want it to be not really liquidy, but kind of liquidy enough that you're gonna be able to pour it into the lid. So then the other thing that you can do with this, like I said, is add some color. So you don't have to do this if you don't have paint to color your grout, that's fine. You can just do it as white, or you might have some other color grout and that's fine too. So for this, I'm just gonna put a little squirt of the paint in here. Hopefully, there we go. And mix that around. Oops. And you can sort of see here, that's giving a nice color. And just like anything like this, the more paint you put in there, the brighter, the more vibrant the color is gonna be. So it's up to you how dark you wanna make it. And that may kind of depend on the paint that you have too. The paint also is gonna add a little bit of wetness to the grout. So you might want it to be a little bit drier when you add the paint, and then that'll give you a better idea of how much water you need in there. So I think this is looking pretty good for us right now. So we are going to put it into the lid. So you just wanna put the lid flat on a table, and then you're just gonna kind of dump it, spoon it into that little cup. So I don't have a spoon to use, but I'm just using my little stick here. That works fine too. And you can see it's coming out pretty easily, but it's not just flowing out of there. So I've got my little pile of grout in there, and then what I usually suggest people do is just kind of tap it down on the table like this, hold it on either side, tap it down, because that's gonna make it go out to the edges. You can see that there, so that it's filled out the lid pretty nicely. And the other thing you want to make sure to do is don't overfill your lid, because we are going to be putting some pieces in there. So if it's filled all the way to the very tippy top and you start to put things in there, everything's going to start overflowing the edges. So you can always add a little bit more if you think it doesn't have enough. So I'd say sort of go easy when you start on it. So I have my little container here with lots of little bits and pieces that we're gonna put in there. So this is the part where you really get to be creative, and you can put as much or as little as you want in there in any way that you want to do it. The one thing I usually tell people when you're doing this is just to sort of, if you like to plan out before you put things in, do that before you start putting the pieces in, because once you put them in the grout, it's really hard to get them out. So we often say Isaiah Zagar's process when he makes his mosaics is that wherever you put the piece, that's the perfect place. So that's a good philosophy to follow when you're making these mosaic medallions, because if you put something in there and then you try to get it out, you're gonna get grout all over your finger, you're gonna have grout all over the piece, and often you might just have to throw that piece away and won't really be able to use it again. So we're not striving for perfection here. Whatever you do is going to be the right thing. So I'm going to start with these little beads, a little strand of beads. I've got a little letter bead here. And let's see what else we have. We got this soda can tab. You can make these more 3D too, so you have stuff sort of sticking out there. And when you put the pieces in, You want to give them a little tap so that they are going into the grout. You can see me sort of tapping them down there. But again, don't push them really hard because then sometimes they just sink right under the grout and you can't even see them anymore. But maybe that's what you want to do. So I have a few pieces in there. Maybe I want a few more things. I'm going to see what else I have in here. Maybe pick out a couple more things that I like. Again, I'm doing this pretty randomly. You could plan this out much more than I am doing. It's just totally up to you. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I have all the pieces in there. You can see that they're stuck in there pretty well. They're not falling out even when I'm holding it up like this, but this is gonna take a while to dry. So most grouts like this usually say about 24 hours to dry. So I would suggest, for the most part, if you can, leaving them to dry that long and just leaving them on a table like this so they can sit there, everything can get nice and hard and stuck in there, and you can see, like, ones that we have done before, everything is not gonna fall out. I can turn these upside down and they've got everything cemented in there. But this, if you start moving it around, especially if you pick it up by the string, sometimes we'll start to move your grout and the pieces around. So try to let it sit, I would say at least for an hour if you have to take it somewhere, but the longer you can let it sit, the better. And the wetter your grout is, the longer it's gonna take to dry. If it was a little bit drier, when you put it in there, it'll probably dry a little bit more quickly. So that's how you make a mosaic medallion. So they're really kind of fun to make. So you could use this as a decoration. You could wear it around your neck if you want to. And you can do lots of kind of fun things with that, especially depending on what kind of lids you have. The one other thing I will mention too is that the cleanup for the grout, you cannot put this down the sink. So you don't want to rinse anything off in your sink. You don't want to kind of, rinse out the grout down your sink because it can really kind of clog things up. So that's why if you have it in a little disposable thing like this, you can just sort of throw the whole thing away. If you do have it in a container that you want to keep, just try to scrape out as much as you can. You can use like a paper towel too if you want to wipe off your spoon or something like we did with this one, so you can keep it for later. But I hope you have fun making your mosaic medallions and that we'll see you at the Magic Garden soon.